So we got Ryan from Irradiated Nintendos. What's going on there, Ryan?
How's it going?
Pretty good.
Doing all right.
So let me just say I'm a Christian. I've been listening for the last couple of minutes, and you were talking about the proof. I don't necessarily have proof. I believe in what works for me. I do have a couple of stories I'd like to share, and maybe you can give me some feedback on what you think.
That's what we're interested in. That's why you called in. You said you had some pretty unexplainable, miraculous things that happened to you as a cancer survivor, right?
Well, that and another story as well. So the cancer thing, I was diagnosing the teens. Yes, they went in, found cancer, came back, said that I had to have another surgery within 2 weeks, that they were going to take my arm. I didn't know what else to do, so I went to the church. The pastor wasn't actually there. That's who I was searching for. But an elderly lady of the church said some prayers, put her hand on my shoulder. As she said the prayers, it felt like someone grabbed a hold of where the cancer was at and squeezed as tight as they could. And it felt like my arm got lifted and put in what I can only explain as molten metal. Went back in for the surgery. Doctor could not find any sign of cancer, even though she was 100% sure that there was still going to be cancer in my arm and I was going to have my arm amputated. That's one of the stories. I mean, there's a little more details into that, but I can't explain. I'm not educated enough to explain it.
Right. So let me ask you this: what's more likely? God laid His hand on you through that through the woman that was in the church, or a misdiagnosis?
Misdiagnosis, not likely. 12 doctors from all over the world looked at me. I'm one of a few handful of people that have been diagnosed with that cancer. It was most definitely cancer. They'd already removed a tumor from my arm that was cancerous, 100%. As far as
well, you left that part out of your story, by the way. Like you said that you got scanned.
Yeah, it was a second surgery that I was supposed to have my arm amputated. I apologize for leaving that out. So anyway,
okay. Well, but still, what I'm saying is the misdiagnosis is that your arm has to be removed. I'm not saying that you didn't have cancer altogether. I'm saying that the part where they looked at it, they said that your arm's going to have to be removed. What if it was just a misdiagnosis? And I mean, I'm not exactly sure why your arm. I'm not a doctor, obviously. I'm an engineer, but I don't know why your arm felt that way, but very obviously, you felt something happen. But I feel like a misdiagnosis is always going to be more likely than God specifically reaching down to heal you.
And I've asked that same question 1,000 times. Why did that happen? I've looked up testimonials on different websites. I've heard of several people explaining the same thing, of a burning sensation and then being terminal and then no signs of cancer. I've seen several different, I can't give you an exact example of it, but I have read.
Yeah, I don't.
Where
what you've said, Ryan, is you don't have an explanation for it, and I agree with that, and that's fine. I just had my appendix out a few weeks ago, and for like all year long, I've been having radiating pain in my lower right abdomen, and I'd been into the hospital twice before the time that they caught it, saying, I think this is appendicitis. And they went in and did some imaging. They took blood. And both times they were like, Doesn't look like it. Like there's no inflammation. And then one of the times I got imaging ordered by my doctor because it was happening again, and they saw that my appendix was a little bit bigger than a normal appendix should be, and they diagnosed me with an anatomical anomaly. They just said it doesn't look like it's the level of appendicitis, but it just looks like it's an anatomical anomaly where it's a little bit bigger than it normally should be. And then they also found a hernia near the same area, and they were like, you know what? It's probably the hernia. The thing you're feeling is probably that hernia. And then, like, you know, a few more weeks go by, and I have a day all of a sudden where the whole right side is like, if I touch it at all, it's on fire. So I go back in and I'm like, I don't know what it's going to be. They've turned me away 3 times now, saying that I'm making this up, or that it's in my head, or that it's psychosomatic. I can't seem, like, I don't know what else it is. Like, what else should we be looking at? Finally, they come in and they're like, yeah, it's appendicitis. And they took my appendix out. And I don't know what any of that means. I don't think that, and I know that this is a different example. It's not quite as fantastical as having someone place their hands on me and feeling this sensation of molten lead. I'm just saying that, like, you know, science, medical science is, it's tricky, and like looking at bodies on scans and stuff, things get missed sometimes, or things get interpreted different ways by different physicians. And the process is not always a straight line from, you know,
and I can agree with you 100% on that. And that's why they're practicing physicians.
Right.
Every time they do something, it's a practice. Nobody knows 100% what they're doing.
Right. But Ryan, why does malpractice insurance exist if that's not something that's prevalent, you know, as just part of the profession?
I mean, you have an argument there, and I don't know. I'm not a lawyer or a doctor. So I know that in my experience, that's what I experienced, what I went through. I know that to add to that story, I had someone with me that was a non-believer. And as we walked to the car, and I don't push religion on anyone, I won't, because as the way that I believe as a Christian, that's judgmental for me to do that. I will shake anybody's hand at any time, and I'm not supposed to judge anyone. And your beliefs are your beliefs. And if I say that you're wrong, or I can say I disagree, but if I say that you're 100% wrong, then that's me being judgmental on your beliefs, and that's not Christian-like at all, in my opinion. But the kid that was with me at the time, he actually said, I don't know what just happened, but that was weird. And he was crying. And since then, he has actually went, and he goes to church more than I do.
Okay.
Again, I cannot explain that.
I do want to. Okay. I want to point something out about your cancer story, because sorry, this is a little bit late here, but there has been historical and recent medical literature that shows spontaneous regressions frequently occur following incomplete surgical removal of a tumor. So, like, this is a known effect that has been happening, or that has happened as we've, you know, progressed in our medical knowledge and done more research into the effects of these things. So, like, the thing that you experienced is a known medical thing. Like, it's a known effect of incomplete surgical removal of a tumor. So, I mean, that's a known effect. Just saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I appreciate
and part of that
info.
is like, yeah, and part of that is just like, there are things that obviously there are things that, like, you definitely don't understand about medical science because you're not a doctor. And there are also just things that, like, doctors and physicians don't understand about medicine until they do. And that's just sort of how kind of everything works. You know, it's like the black swan theory, like, where people thought the black swans didn't exist it was even like a saying. It was like, oh, that's as unlikely as a black swan. And it was just because they lived in a part of the world where they had never observed a black swan before, because black swans didn't live in that part of the world. And then they went to a part of the world where it was like, oh, there's black swans all over the place here. And it's just sort of like, you don't know something until you observe it, and then you start to understand it. And that happens all the time in science. And it doesn't make any logical sense to always jump to must be magic. You know, it.
Well, I'm not saying that it's magic. Magic is illusion.
No.
Harry Houdini
If I
could get out of
if I can,
handcuffs. That didn't make it magic.
hold on. No, Ryan, no, that's not what we mean when we say magic. Magic is the best definition I can come up with. What we mean is the suspension of the natural order of reality for some perceived like effect, right? So, like obviously, having a magical wand. Sorry, my wand is somewhere else. I've got a wand. Let's say you got a magical wand and you flick it and a fireball comes out of it. That would be magic. It's the exact same thing that has happened in the Bible. There's actually one prophet in the Bible that called down magical fire from the heavens to, totally lay waste to an army that was coming to stop him. And so, like, that's what we're talking about when we're talking about magic. It's a suspension of the natural order of reality in order to, have some kind of effect or whatnot.
So a friend of mine actually asked me to call in to you guys because he's one of my best friends and he actually is a non-believer. But I will tell you the same thing that maybe I told him before. I'm not sure, but you just said that perception. Can you quote that again for me? What you said was magical. If perception is reality and I perceive myself as there being a higher power, then in theory, technically would not be correct. Because if my perception is that Jesus Christ died for my sins and he exists and his Father in heaven is God, then that is. Am I looking
I'm sorry,
at that wrong?
Ryan, I don't know what you're talking about right now. I don't know what you're talking about right now. When I described magic, I said the suspension of the natural order of reality. That's what magic would be in that. So I don't know how you got
natural order of reality. I apologize.
No. Okay. Well, so
I heard
in
you
any
wrong.
case, no, that's fine. In any case, there is something that I don't mean to take charge of the call here, Austin. Austin, do you have any thoughts about this so far?
Have at it, John. Take it away.
So, as far as these miracles go, there, Ryan, there's something that always comes to my mind, and maybe you can help me connect the dots here and explain it for me, right? Whenever I hear about somebody being prayed for and like there's some kind of miracle that happens and somebody is cured, which I'm not trying to demean your recovery from cancer or anything like that. Just on the outset, I just want to say I'm not trying to demean that. But in my mind, whenever somebody says, "Oh, this miracle happened," and either I was saved or I prayed and this person was saved, I think about the countless times that children have prayed to God to have like their abusers stop abusing them in one way or another, and it seems to me like God has answered those prayers with a resounding no. If he exists, and it's for whatever reason.
So, can I ask you something without interrupting? Or what we kind of interrupt. So how many of those prayers has he answered? Because we only hear about the ones that he doesn't answer.
No, we hear about the ones that he answered all the time. Everyone that feels like they've had a prayer answered won't shut up about it for the rest of their life. We hear about those all the time. Like, what do you mean?
And you also hear about ones that weren't answered.
Right,
like
because the point, the reason why,
call,
but the reason why, John, really quick, or sorry, the reason why, Ryan, really quick, the reason why we also hear about the ones that aren't answered is because there needs to be the balanced perspective of like, okay, if there's two people lying in hospital beds right next to each other, and they were both really, really good people, and they both lived really, really good lives, and they were both really, really faithful members of their church that paid tithing and showed up and read their scriptures, and both of them are dying of cancer, and both of them are having blessings given to them that they'll recover from their cancer, and one of them recovers and one of them doesn't. We need to tell both stories, because what that means is the prayer had a null effect, is what that means. Is it means that the cancer was going to do what it was going to do, regardless of whether or not they were blessed. Like the prayer, it didn't matter, because for one guy it resulted in death, and the other person it resulted in recovery. And it's like you need to tell both stories.
In my belief, I would say that the guy that recovered had more things to still do on this earth.
Right, of course.
The guy
that's always
that passed.
Right. Right. That's the believer apologetics is if the prayer doesn't work, it's because that was God's will. He needed them on the, I don't know if you heard at the beginning of the call, I talked about these two different stories of one man who was saved from a gunshot wound by God, and another man who had the exact same position in the exact same church was tripped and fell into a riding lawnmower and was eaten by a riding lawnmower and died. And so under your framework, it would be,
the guy who was saved, to argue that fact, well, maybe the guy that tripped into the riding lawnmower was the guy you were talking about.
I'm sorry, I muted you, Ryan.
Hold on, I just want to say, under your framework of how you believe prayer works, it's God saved the one guy from a gunshot wound because he had more work that he had to do here on earth, and he wanted him to have more time with his family and his grandkids. But the other guy, God needed him back in heaven, and it's like, why doesn't he just have him die of like die in his sleep peacefully? Why does he have to go face first into a riding lawnmower? Like, why does it have to be a literal death from a horror movie? Like, and in both scenarios, it's just sort of like the more likely answer is God has nothing to do with it, right? Prayer has nothing to do with it. Status in the church has nothing to do with it. It's just life on life's terms. Life is just a wild, chaotic, violent ride.
All right, Ryan, you're unmuted.
So on that note, it takes me to my second story. So my daughter was being born, and I was told that I had to choose her mother or her. And I didn't know what I was going to do. My mother-in-law at the time handed me a cigarette and said, "You got a couple minutes, go downstairs and smoke this." It's the middle of January. I go downstairs. I don't have a lighter on me. I'm staring at a parking lot. And again, my beliefs, I know what I've seen. I know who I talked to. But anyway, I'm staring at a parking lot. Nothing there. I look down to try to find a lighter in my pocket. I look up, and there's a man standing in front of me. When I looked up, I noticed that he was wearing, all I seen was his toes, honestly. I don't know if he was wearing sandals or not, but I seen his feet. And it's January. It's cold outside in Indiana. Anyway, he asked me if I was looking for a light. It was his words. And I said, "Yeah, you could say that." Well, he lit my cigarette. I took a couple puffs off of it. He basically told me that my wife and little girl were going to be fine. I should get back upstairs. Never told him why I was at the hospital.
Whoa. That's crazy.
I turned around and said, "Yeah, you're probably right." And he wasn't there anymore. When I got upstairs, my daughter had turned around.
Wait.
And
hold on.
The angel that lights cigarettes. Ryan, this is a much better story than your first one. I like this one a lot. The angel in the parking lot that lights random people's cigarettes. I know. I bet I can. I think that the explanation is it's bullshit. Buddy, I'm sorry. That's a wild story. The angel that lights cigarettes in parking lots and then disappears.
I mean,
what a weird interventionalist God. What a strange, what a strange way.
I gotta believe what I believe.
Ryan.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me what the Amos Road story is?
I don't have any idea.
You have no idea what the Amos Road story is?
None.
Okay. All right. So after Jesus, this is a fun story. After Jesus has died and everything, and people are waiting on him to come back to life or whatever. There's two guys on a road. There's two guys on a road, and they're met by a third guy who's cloaked. Right. And they don't know who he is. And they're talking about Jesus all the way down. And then they finally get to the end of their journey. And, they finally realize, oh shit, that's Jesus. And then he disappears like fucking Batman. And, I feel like your story is very similar to that in that I feel like you would, like you could easily just fabricate this based off of the Amos Road story, because you've got the shrouded Jesus figure that is telling you things that you didn't tell him, and it ends up being true. And so that's why we're a bit doubtful about this. This is something that Christians do all the time. But regardless of that, I think that your story here, as far as like your wife and daughter being saved, which I'm glad that you didn't have to make that choice, by the way. I'm glad that your wife and daughter were fine. But I feel like it's way more likely that maybe the guy overheard something, and, you know, just from wherever he was and he was outside, maybe he had sandals on, maybe he didn't. I don't know. But I think that just somebody walking out of sight, you know, walking into sight and then walking out of sight is way more likely than Jesus Christ appearing to you.
I mean, you're
And
absolutely
lighting
correct.
your cigarette.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey.
Lighting it, which, by the way, I mean, there's a reason why Star Wars, when they they have cigarettes in Star Wars, they call them cancer sticks, right, or whatever.
Hey,
I can't remember exactly what they call them. But,
I understand that too.
right.
Jesus was
My
like,
point
"Hey,
is
Ryan, suck down a little bit of this cancer. Your wife and your kid are gonna be fine, Ryan." Yeah, and then he just disappeared. It's like the coolest visitation ever.
Hey, I can't explain what happened. I'm not smart enough to, but
I just
You
did.
don't need to be. You don't need to be smart enough to. Like, people. Like, here's the thing too: is like, this is a story you've presumably been telling for years, and I would bet that every time you tell this story, you embellish it just a little bit more than the last time you told it. Not on purpose, but because it makes the story feel richer and more interesting in your mind. And you've been telling this story for years, and like, maybe it started off as just like, I was a little bit distraught, and a nice stranger in the parking lot offered me a lighter and gave me a word of encouragement and told me like, "Hey, it's going to be all right, man," and walked away. And that's how it went. But every time you tell the story, it just gets a little bit more fantastical, a little bit more, like, and it's not something that you're doing consciously. It's just something that, like, it makes the story have more, because we know this about memory. Like, people do this all the time. We know the eyewitness testimony is really unreliable because people who witnessed a crime will
you're not remembering what
tell,
you've seen. You're remembering the memory.
exactly. You're remembering the emotion of it. So it's like, people witness something, they tell the police immediately on site what they saw, but then every time they rethink about it, and then they hear more details about the case, and they're like, "Actually, I feel like I heard someone say something about a briefcase, and wasn't that one of the details?" Like, and you start adding in these things, and then your memory starts to become this kind of movie that you've written the script to, not because you're intentionally trying to gaslight yourself into misremembering things, but because, and I don't know, but it also might be in your case. I just think,
I'm going to do a little bit of research and ask the gentleman that asked me to call you, because I've told him that story before, and I'm going to see what he remembers, if it was the same as what I told you guys, just for my peace of mind.
Okay, that's fine.
Sure. And even if it is that, I will remain unconvinced that Jesus Christ appeared to you and lit your cigarette and told you that your wife and kid were going to be okay, and then disappeared.
And I will remain convinced that it was.
Okay.
That's the great about having beliefs.
I mean, you said that before. You were like, "I got to believe what I believe." And I will just also offer, no, you don't. You don't have to believe that. You can believe something else.
But I'm also kind of a little backwards when it comes to stuff, because I also believe in evolution. I'm not necessarily.
That's not a backwards thing
that me and him have discussed.
That's actually a pretty normal thing. Why do you think that it's? Why do you think that's a backwards thing to both be a Christian and accept evolution?
I've just been a lot of Christians, and first, let me tell you that Christians are the first people to point fingers and be judgmental. I don't necessarily like churches very well, because it's usually the same 200-300 people, unless it's a mega church, and they're saying the same thing over and over again, but That's insanity. They're not getting any results. If you're talking to the same group of people over and over again and not trying to, in Christianity, spread the word of Jesus, then you're not doing anything. It's counterproductive. You're basically just asking people for their money at that point.
Okay.
But anyway.
Well, I think we kind of reached the end of this there, Ryan.
Yes,
so
sir.
I don't know, Austin, you got any final thoughts for Ryan here?
Nope. Good stories, Ryan. Those are cool. I don't think that they mean what you think they mean. And I also don't think that the second one happened the way that you think it happened, but that's okay. I wasn't there and you were. And thanks for letting us know the stories that happened to you.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right. See you later, Ryan.
Later.
All right. So yeah, the one thing that I was wanting to try to get him to think about there was the whole idea of like having miracles done specifically for you, but then God allowing children to be born like, you know, addicted to drugs or bone cancer. You could name any number of things like, and then when he said that like, oh, well, you know, he just didn't have anything left to do here on this earth, so God called him home or some kind of shit, or this other guy had more things to do. It's kind of like, you know, there are kids that are dying, like hundreds of kids every year in like mass shootings, and like God apparently had not, like there was no point in those kids being alive, you know, other than to be a victim of a school shooting. Like I don't feel like a lot of Christians actually think out the things that they're saying and the ramifications of them.
Yeah, it's that like great classic clip of, you know, that person who had just survived a twister that hit their town, and you know, they're standing in the shambles of their neighborhood, and you know, several neighbors are dead, animals are dead, you know, people are just standing in the wreckage of their life, and it's like the CNN interview where the interviewer's like, well, I'm sure you're thanking God right now that you were spared, and the person's like, no, not at all. First of all, I don't believe in God. And second of all, any God, like, this is not cool at all what happened to me. I'm not happy at all that if you believe in a God that would do something like this to me. So no, I find that very offensive. And it's like, yeah, it's like, like Ryan said, we only ever hear the stories about the prayers that don't work. And I'm like, that's not true. That's not true at all. We hear stories all the time of miracles that took place as the result of prayer or blessings and things like that. And it just all, you need to tell the totality of the story, because it all goes to it all goes more to our argument, which is you know, you've got to hear both sides. You've got to hear about the stories where prayer worked and where prayer definitely didn't work, to understand that prayer is not magical, that it does not have magical properties, that it just sort of works like this thing where you rub a lamp and you make a wish and your cancer goes away, you know?
Thanks for watching that clip. Hey, we're trying to do some data research about whether or not our callers successfully proved that God existed. If they didn't, don't forget to like and subscribe. That's how we know they failed. But if you don't like and subscribe, you're saying that they succeeded. So you're saying that by liking and subscribing, you will be affirming that you are an atheist. Hey, what else should they do?
I don't know. Maybe go to patreon.com/calltheline and donate some of their hard-earned money.
Like and subscribe.